So this is your home screen, okay? From your home screen, you have float bypass control on or off. What that allows you to do when float bypass is off, then it's gonna automatically try to refill the tank, okay? When float bypass is on, that allows you to run out the rest of the tank and keep running, okay? It's no longer looking at the float and shutting the machine down. You can prime your piston, which should send that all the way to the back, but it's not doing that. And you have reset. Your reset, you're always gonna have to use if you e-stop, see how it starts flashing? You have to reset, or if you turn the machine off, when you turn it back on, you'll have to reset before you can do anything. Up here it tells you the machine state is stopped. Means nothing's broken, it's not waiting on anything, we just don't have it, we're running. Okay, the other thing you'll see, it'll say run, or it'll say, what does it say? It'll give you a yellow one, and it's just waiting on one of the sensors to be made before it goes to the next step. Right here it says the recipe that you're running. That's gonna be important after you start adding recipes in, okay? And you're running an 8 ounce or 16 ounce, or if you wanna name them Mike, Bill, and George, then you know which one you're running. You have a log out button and a log in button. Right now, I'm logged in as manager, okay? So I can save changes. If it is blank, the only thing you can't do is save changes you make. You can still make changes, you just can't save any of them. This is your data screen. This is where you can change what recipe you're running. So if you want to go from number 3 to number 1, you move the cursor up, hit select, load, and if you look up here, see where it says recipe, and now it says 8 ounce deli. So I'm running a new recipe. In this screen right here, it'll tell me how many bottles a minute I'm running, and that changes every cycle, okay? Or I'm sorry, it's updated every cycle. If you're running, it shouldn't change. It'll be like, you've been running 26 bottles a minute until we had to wait for, the product to fill, and then it'll drop down to like 12 bottles a minute until it's full, and then it'll go back to 26 bottles a minute. Cycle time, that is changed every single cycle. So it's this cycle ran 12 seconds, the next cycle is running 13 seconds, and it updates every single time. You're running 4 nozzles, okay? If you change that number, the computer doesn't know any different. So I can tell it I'm running 12 heads, and it'll do this math based on 12 heads. And it'll be like, you're running 187 bottles a minute. And you're like, no, I'm not. That's not physically possible. I don't know what you're talking about. The other thing that this can do is, say you wanted to run 800 of this container. I could tell it, give me 800, and turn my batch counter on, and it'll run all 800 of them. Well, 796. The last 4 it'll fill, and it will leave right here. It won't let them exit. And the machine will stop running. It'll say, I'm done. I've hit the count you wanted me to, and I'm not gonna do anything else. So then you just have to go manual, on, start it again, it'll run another 800.
So you can only do the 800 when it's in manual mode, or you can put it on auto and then also tell it to do 800?
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
You should be able to, absolutely. If you don't care to stop at 800, you just want to keep running as much as you can, you turn the dash counter off and it'll just keep running.
Okay.
These are my setup screens. There's multiple in this one. So this one has to do with my indexing, okay? That's got everything to do with the conveyor, the gate timers, how fast the conveyor moves, all that good happy stuff. So the first thing right here is index mode. I can run in run, or I can run in index, okay? Index means it's gonna turn the conveyor off every time it goes to fill, all right? So it's gonna turn it on, move containers in or out, stop, fill the next set, then turn it on, and it'll just keep repeating that. In run mode, the conveyor never stops. The conveyor runs the entire time, and then it's just working on timers for the gates, okay? Gives you a much higher rate of production.
Okay. Does it have any effect on anything as far as like you would prefer it to run on run or on index?
I prefer index, but I also don't usually work with a container like this. This is a super stable container.
Yeah.
So it's not gonna fall over.
Right.
So I can run.
Oh.
It's not, you know what I mean? It's not gonna fall over. I don't need back pressure.
Yeah.
So in this one, I can probably get away with running anything that's that stable. You can get away with running. If you go to, like you were saying, the other ones are pretty much the same diameter. They're just taller. Then I would start looking at, are they going to fall over? If they hit the gate, are they going to trip and then the nozzle miss? You know, that other stuff can compound to make you want to change your mind on which one you're running.
Right.
The other thing that has to do, no, we'll get into something else in a minute that'll tie into that container height thing. So when I'm running in index mode, I want to use an index delay. What that delay does is it pauses, it adds that amount of time before the conveyor turns back on. And that allows your gate to get completely out of the way before the containers go into it. Okay. At 0.2 of a second is not something you'll really notice, but it will save a little extra wear on your gate. Just lets it get out of the way so it's not moving under pressure. Conveyor speed right now is at 80%. Guess what? You can go as high as 100%, and that's as fast as it can go. So the conveyor speed very much has to do with your timers here. So at 80%, I need 1.6 seconds of discharge time for the 4 containers to get out. Okay. If my containers are really small like this, then I probably only need half a second for them all to get out. You know what I mean? So that is completely on a timer. If I slow the conveyor down, then I need more time in my discharge because the conveyor is moving slower. It's going to take longer for the containers to get past it. If I speed it up, I can probably take time out of there and get a tighter run. Okay. This timer right here, the infeed, that is not to do with the gate, it has to do with the sensor. It's how long the sensor has to be blocked by a container to run. So if I want, remember I was telling you we can get bigger pauses between each set. I can take that and say, instead of seeing the container for 1 second, see how high I can go. You have to see a container for 10 seconds before you run. So now I've created a 9-second gap between each set of containers coming out. So I'll get without slowing anything down, I've now added a lot of time to each run. I'll take that back down a little. All right. Your gate gap, that's exactly what it is. This gate's gonna stay closed after that gate opens, and it creates a gap between the containers that are full and leaving and the containers that are empty coming in. So you have a gap for that gate to shoot into. The only timer I haven't talked about is this one. It's a downstream backup, and that is that sensor right there. When something is blocking that sensor for more than 1/4 of a second, then the machine knows there's a backup on the line that won't let the next set exit. It'll just hold it until it's clear. When you're running in index mode, it will not clear by itself because it won't turn the conveyor back on. Okay, it says I'm blocked, I can't turn anything on. So you walk over and you move the one container out of the way and off it goes again. If you're running in run mode, the conveyor never stops. So they're sitting there in front of the conveyor. As soon as these go away and this one moves, it's good to run the next setting. Okay. This is your fill recipe. These are really good to have a picture of because you're not ever going to change those. Okay. So down here it explains what each one does, but Your three-way valve is really just saying, hey computer, I'm gonna need 3/4 of a second for that valve to completely rotate before you do the next step. All right. Discharge is not how long it takes it to discharge. Has more to do with when it says, okay, I've discharged long enough, I can close the nozzle. So you're not closing the nozzle and still trying to discharge into it. Same thing with the prime and then your nozzles. So your nozzles are delaying the discharge after they open for the same reason. You want them open before that piston starts coming forward, so you're not putting a lot of pressure on your tip. All right, I don't remember what size pistons you have, but if you're gonna go to, let's pretend you have a 12-ounce cylinder, okay? If you wanna do a 16-ounce fill, you can't get 16 ounces out of 12.
Right.
So you can turn multi-stroke on and have it cycle twice.
Oh, okay.
So now you can do two 6 ounces, and have, or I'm sorry, 2 8 ounces and get 16. Over here you've got clean mode and start clean cycle. Clean mode you turn on. Pretty much it's just going to keep cycling until you turn it back off. All right. So have a way to capture everything that's coming out of here.
Okay.
All right.
Well, it won't come down, it'll just stay up, cycling like that?
That's a good question. Depends on what they were thinking when they wrote the recipe. I'm not usually yes, but then some of them you have to have the nozzles all the way down before you hit start. Okay. So, and either way, if you have to have them all the way down, then you can crank the wheel and raise it all up high enough for you to deal with. Another way of doing it, running clean mode like that will clean your entire fluid path and through the nozzle. Or you can disconnect these here, clean these manually, and you can run the hoses just down, into a bucket. Well, I wouldn't do a bucket. You're going to move a lot of. It's going to be a lot. So some kind of a tank, vat, something like that.
Yeah.
But as soon as you hit, clean cycle, it'll tell you how many strokes it's ran. So if you find out, in order for the nozzle to get clean, it's going to take me at least 20 strokes. Well, you can look at it and be like, well, it's only ran 15, and you can continue doing whatever until you hit the 20. This is your dive screen. Right now we're running a dive mode, which means this is going to come down to the bottom, stay there, complete the fill cycle, and move back up, okay? You have a bottom up mode. That is going to be more for, no, not with that type of a nozzle. You're always going to use dive with this one. Dive or park. Bottom up, what it will do is if you had a longer nozzle, is come down to the bottom of the air cylinder, start the fill, and then it'll stay at the bottom for that amount of time and then start moving up. So that as it fills, the nozzle comes up out of the way, and then it sees a sensor, finishes, and then it moves up to the next sensor and sends out the drip tray. Yeah. Park mode means nothing moves. When you're running a real nice thick product like this with a real wide-based container, park is my favorite thing to run. It gives me the fastest turnout time because I'm not waiting on anything to move. The only sensors I'm waiting on are the ones looking for containers. Everything else is on a timer. So that'll give you your highest rate per minute. Keep in mind though, when you're running park, is it's not gonna move. Yeah. So if I run it in park from where it's at, it's gonna try to fill your containers from where it's sitting right now, okay? This is your product screen. Again, you have the float bypass, which we will also have in the home screen. I can tell it to fill the tank manually. I just say, hey, fill the tank. And that should turn on your pump, open the valve, fill the tank, and then turn off automatically. The product refill delay is just that. If I tell it, hey, delay 5 seconds, as soon as the float says, hey, I'm low, the computer goes, all right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now I can fill, okay? What that's for is usually for thin product, and you're sloshing whenever you go to fill. So it lets it kind of settle down. So if you just filled it and it's really turbulent, it's not going high, low, and keep trying to fill it. it'll let it settle down and then fill. This is your manual screen. Inside your manual screen, you can make everything happen that it does in automatic. I can open my gates. I can, ooh, that's nice and slow. I can turn my conveyor on and off. I can move my air cylinder up and down. Move my drip tray. I can open my valve or my nozzles. I'm not going to right now. I can also open the product valve, which is down there. Well, right now I have the air disconnected, so it doesn't open. So normally I could. I can also use my three-way valve in my discharge. So in this screen, I can open my nozzles, flip my three-way and hit discharge, and it'll out. Okay, so now I'm all the way to the rear. I flip my three-ways, they're now facing the nozzle. I open my nozzle and hit that button, and I'm gonna get product squeezing out of it, okay? That comes in very handy if, like right now, we've got that full, but we have nothing through the lines. So I can move it all through there and get it all primed before I go. The other time I do it is if it's, if I'm running a thin product through these, then I'll put like a bucket or something up here on the nozzle and run it until I don't have any air bubbles coming out. And I'll get all my air out of lines. As thick as this product is, I'm not worried about air bubbles. Once I get everything to the nozzle, it's gonna be there. The service screen just has all our contact information. Okay. I don't know if you guys saw something flash and it disappeared. Did you see it? No? Okay. So if you ever run into problems, you can always call us using this screen and we'll help you out. If I'm logged in, come on. Come on now. Okay, never mind. If I log in with my login and password, I get other stuff. So, I was like, I wonder if you have it. So one of the things it can do that is on this screen is called dry cycle. It does everything but actually let it pump. Okay. The reason we do that is for like shows and stuff. And we just build it into our program so we can log into one and use it for a show.
So it's running everything except the cylinders.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. We also use it for all our other ones, so you're doing everything but turning the pumps on. Yeah. You don't want to turn them on dry. Right. You certainly don't want to be sitting in Vegas emptying bottles every 2 minutes either. So, yeah, it was a nice little function we had. I have seen a couple of them where if you log in as manager, it pops up. So okay. I was like, I don't know. All right, so couple other things we'll go over real quick. I'm going to look at before I make that determination, I'll look at the setup sheet. All right, so this is your in-gate photo eye. Okay. If I took this sensor and the reflector, anytime I say on the conveyor and I say I'm moving a sensor, you also have to move the reflector, and I always forget to say that. The sensors on the conveyor require a reflector to work, okay? So they know when they see the reflector, it's clear. When something is blocking that reflector, it's blocked. Then they can't see it. If I move a sensor and I don't move the reflector, then it acts the same as if it's blocked, okay? It never sees the reflector, so it's never clear. That can end up being a bad thing. Say in this case, if this one doesn't see the reflector, then it always believes there's a downstream backup and your machine will only run one cycle and then won't run another one because it's waiting on the block to go away and it can't. But in the case of the taller the containers, if I wanted to, or if they have an issue where they're trying to fall backwards a lot, I can take this sensor and reflector and put it down here. I still only fill 4 at a time, but now I have to have a whole bunch of them in a row before it'll run, and it keeps all of these standing up because they have back pressure. They can't fall over backwards.
They're only about an inch taller, so it's not that bad.
Oh, really?
Stability.
You're taking all the fun out of my job. Alright. So this one is your outgate sensor, okay? Your outgate sensor you always want on the very first container. You don't want it anywhere else because if one of these containers gets stuck coming in, they get caught on the rails or I don't know, there's a little piece of plastic on the container or something that snags and it holds it up. If it's back here and it sees it, well then it assumes there's a full pocket and it'll run an empty, you'll just run a nozzle over the conveyor, just spill all over the place. So this one's super important on where you want it. This one's not super important in where you want it unless you're looking at a tipping issue. But you want it either on the last container or further upstream, okay? You wouldn't want it on like these two because once it sees here, it says, okay, I've got a full pocket and it's ready to run. So you either want it on the last container or further up. These sensors over here, these are proximity switches, so they're actually just looking at the back of the metal. There is no reflector. This is your P1 or your multi-stroke, okay? This is your lower and this is your upper, okay? The way we're gonna run it in either dive, let's see, dive it's not gonna look for it and park it's not gonna look for it. If you're running multi-stroke, it is gonna look for this sensor, okay? So it's gonna come all the way, it's gonna come all the way to the bottom of the cylinder. That only makes sense if you know that on this air cylinder itself are two more sensors that you don't move. Okay, there's one at the top and one at the bottom. So it's gonna take this completely, bring it all the way down so it can see the bottom sensor. In dive mode, that is all it's looking for. It's gonna come down and see the bottom sensor, run, move up, and start the next set. If you're running multi-stroke, it's gonna come all the way to the bottom, and that's gonna start its fill. It's then gonna move this bar till it can see that sensor. So this one would have to be moved so it can come up, see that sensor, and that's where it's gonna start the next stroke, okay? Once it starts the second fill, the second pump, it's then gonna move to this sensor, okay? It'll sit there until that pump's done. Once it starts to retract, it'll move the bar to this sensor, send out the drip tray, and do the whole next cycle. As long as you're doing dive or park, you can forget the sensors even exist, all right? Until that one day you're like, it won't start, and I'll be like, where's your sensors? And then we'll go over that again.
So that's only like on bottoms up type of.
Yeah, bottom up or multi-stroke, yep.